Captain Marcus Thompson rushed into the burning Whitmore mansion, knowing he might not come out alive. What he didn't know was that while he was saving a billionaire's family, his own home was burning down across town. Before starting the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The alarm at Fire Station 19 pierced the quiet Tuesday evening at 11:47 p.m., sending Captain Marcus Thompson and his crew racing through the streets of Westchester County's most exclusive neighborhood. At 34, Marcus had been fighting fires for 12 years, but calls to this particular area always carried extra pressure. These weren't just houses, they were multi-million-dollar estates belonging to some of the wealthiest families in New York. Structure fire at 1428 Maple Ridge Drive, the dispatcher crackled over the radio. Multiple occupants trapped inside, mansion fully involved, flames visible from the street. Marcus knew that address. It belonged to Victoria Whitmore, widow of tech mogul Robert Whitmore and mother of 2 teenage children. It was also the same address from which the fire department had received multiple complaints over the past year about having a black fire captain responding to calls in their exclusive community. Victoria Whitmore had been particularly vocal at city council meetings, arguing that diversity hires in positions of public safety put residents at risk. She had demanded that only the most qualified personnel respond to emergencies in neighborhoods like hers, making it clear that she questioned Marcus's competence based solely on his race. But as Engine 19 rounded the corner onto Maple Ridge Drive, Marcus wasn't thinking about Victoria's prejudice or her complaints. He was thinking about the 2 children who lived in that house and the fact that the entire second floor was already engulfed in flames. "Command to Engine 19, Marcus spoke into his radio as they approached the scene. "We've got a fully involved structure with possible victims on the upper floors. Requesting additional units and establishing incident command." The Whitmore mansion was a sprawling Tudor-style estate worth at least $8 million, with 3 stories and more than 20 rooms. The fire had apparently started in the kitchen and spread rapidly through the first floor before climbing the main staircase to trap anyone sleeping upstairs. Victoria Whitmore was standing on the front lawn in her nightgown, screaming hysterically while neighbors tried to comfort her. "My children!" she cried when she saw Marcus approaching. "Emma and David are still inside. They're on the 3rd floor and I couldn't get to them." Marcus immediately began assessing the situation. The main staircase was completely blocked by flames, the fire was spreading rapidly through the roof, and they had maybe 10 minutes before the structure became too unstable to enter safely. "Ma'am, how old are your children and exactly where are their bedrooms?" Marcus asked, pulling on his breathing apparatus. "Emma is 16, David is 14, Victoria sobbed. "Emma's room is at the end of the 3rd floor hallway. David's is right next to hers." "Please, you have to save them." Marcus was already formulating a rescue plan when his radio crackled with another emergency call that made his blood run cold. "All units, we have a second structure fire at 847 Pine Street. Residential dwelling with possible occupants trapped." 847 Pine Street was Marcus's address. His own house was on fire. For a split second, Marcus felt the world stop spinning. His wife Angela and his 8-year-old daughter Zoe were at home. Angela was 7 months pregnant with their second child. The house he had bought with 15 years of savings, the home where his family slept every night, was burning while he stood in front of a mansion belonging to a woman who had publicly questioned his right to do his job. "Thompson, did you copy that last transmission?" the dispatcher asked over the radio. Marcus looked up at the 3rd floor of the Whitmore mansion, where he could see shadows moving behind smoke-filled windows. Then he looked at Victoria Whitmore, whose children were trapped in the same building where she had complained about his presence in their neighborhood. The choice should have been impossible. No one would blame him for leaving to save his own family. His crew could handle the Whitmore fire until backup arrived. He could be at his own house in 12 minutes. But Marcus was a firefighter, and firefighters don't abandon victims because of personal emergencies. "Copy. Dispatch," Marcus responded into his radio. "Engine 19 is committed to current rescue operation. Send available units to Pine Street immediately." He turned to his lieutenant, David Rodriguez, who had heard the transmission and understood exactly what Marcus was sacrificing. "Cap, that's your house," Rodriguez said quietly. "We can handle this. Go to your family." "Negative," Marcus replied, checking his equipment one final time. "We've got 2 kids trapped on the 3rd floor and maybe 8 minutes before the structure collapses. Rodriguez, take the aerial ladder to the east side windows. Peterson, establish water supply and ventilation. I'm going in through the back service stairs." What Victoria Whitmore didn't know as she watched Marcus disappear into her burning house was that he was risking everything, not just his life, but possibly his family's lives, to save children whose mother had spent months trying to get him removed from his position. The service staircase at the back of the mansion was narrow and filled with smoke, but it was Marcus's best chance of reaching the 3rd floor while avoiding the main fire on the 1st and 2nd levels. Every step took him deeper into a structure that could collapse at any moment, while his radio continued to broadcast updates about the fire at his own home. 847 Pine Street, engine 12 on scene, heavy smoke and flames visible from front of residence, attempting to locate occupants. Marcus forced himself to block out the radio chatter about his own house and focus on the immediate rescue. He could hear crying somewhere above him. One of the Whitmore children was still conscious and calling for help. "Fire department," Marcus shouted as he climbed through the smoke. "Call out if you can hear me." "Help!" a girl's voice responded from the end of the hallway. "We're in Emma's room. The door is blocked." Marcus found Emma and David Whitmore barricaded behind a dresser they had pushed against the bedroom door to keep out the smoke and flames. Both children were conscious but suffering from smoke inhalation, and the floor beneath his feet was growing dangerously hot as the fire spread through the structure below. "I'm Captain Thompson with the fire department," Marcus told them, his voice calm and reassuring despite the chaos around them. "We're going to get you out of here, but I need you to stay low and do exactly what I tell you." Emma Whitmore looked up at Marcus with terror in her eyes, but also with recognition. She had been present at several city council meetings where her mother had complained about unqualified firefighters, and she understood with shocking clarity that the man risking his life to save them was the same man her mother had tried to have removed from his job. "Are you really going to save us?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible through her oxygen mask. "That's what I'm here for," Marcus replied, already working to clear a path to the window where Rodriguez was positioning the aerial ladder. As Marcus carried 14-year-old David and guided 16-year-old Emma toward the ladder, his radio continued to broadcast devastating updates from his own home. 847 Pine Street, engine 12 to command. We've got a fully involved structure, unable to locate occupants, requesting ambulance for possible smoke inhalation victims. Marcus felt his heart breaking as he handed David to Rodriguez on the aerial ladder, but he maintained his professional composure. The Whitmore children's lives depended on his ability to stay focused on the immediate rescue, regardless of what might be happening to his own family. "Easy does it," Marcus told Emma as she climbed onto the ladder. "Just look at Lieutenant Rodriguez. Don't look down." By the time Marcus emerged from the burning mansion, the Whitmore children were receiving oxygen treatment from paramedics, and Victoria was embracing them with tears of relief and gratitude. The mansion was a total loss, but all 3 family members were alive and relatively uninjured. "Captain Thompson," Victoria said, approaching Marcus as he removed his breathing apparatus. I don't know how to thank you. You saved my children's lives." Marcus nodded politely, but his attention was focused on his radio, where he could hear the incident commander at his own house providing updates that grew worse with each transmission. 847 Pine Street, command to all units. Structure is fully involved and unstable. Evacuate all personnel immediately. This is now a defensive operation only. Marcus felt his legs nearly give out. A defensive operation meant the fire was too advanced to save the structure. His house, his family's home, was gone. "Captain Thompson," Victoria continued, not understanding why Marcus seemed distracted. "The paramedics said you risked your life going into that house. You're a hero." "Ma'am, I need to go," Marcus said quietly. "There's been another fire and I need to check on my own family." "Another fire?" Victoria asked, confused. "My house," Marcus replied simply, walking toward his fire truck. My house burned down while I was saving yours. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. This man, whom she had tried to have fired, had sacrificed his own family's home to save her children. While his own house was burning, he had chosen to rescue the children of a woman who had publicly questioned his competence and belonging in their community. Marcus arrived at 847 Pine Street to find smoking ruins where his home had once stood. The small, modest house he had bought with his fire department salary was completely destroyed. But Angela and Zoe were safe. They had escaped through a back window when the fire started in the kitchen, the same room where Marcus cooked breakfast for his daughter every morning before school. Marcus! Angela ran to him as he got out of the fire truck, throwing her arms around him despite her advanced pregnancy. Thank God you're safe. We lost everything, but we're okay. The baby? Marcus asked, holding his wife carefully. Fine. The doctor checked us at the hospital. But Marcus, everything we owned is gone. The photos, the furniture, Zoe's toys, your father's medals from Vietnam, it's all gone. 8-year-old Zoe looked up at her father with wide eyes. Daddy, where are we going to live now? Marcus knelt down to his daughter's level, still wearing his smoke-stained fire gear. We're going to figure that out together, baby girl. The important thing is that you and Mama are safe. What Marcus didn't tell his family was that they had no insurance coverage for the full value of their home, no savings to replace their belongings, and no immediate prospects for finding another place to live in an area where housing costs had skyrocketed beyond what a firefighter's salary could afford. The next morning, Victoria Whitmore stood in the ruins of her own mansion, talking to insurance adjusters who were already discussing rebuilding plans and temporary housing options. Unlike Marcus, Victoria had comprehensive insurance coverage and family wealth that would allow her to rebuild bigger and better than before. But she couldn't stop thinking about Marcus Thompson and the choice he had made the night before. Mrs. Whitmore, her insurance agent said, we'll have you in a luxury hotel suite by tomorrow, and we can start looking at rental properties for the next 6 months while we rebuild. Victoria nodded absently, but her mind was elsewhere. She pulled out her phone and called the fire department. I need to speak to Captain Marcus Thompson, she told the dispatcher. This is Victoria Whitmore. He saved my family last night. I'm sorry, ma'am, but Captain Thompson is off duty today. Can I take a message? Yes, Victoria said, looking at the charred remains of her mansion. Tell him I need to see him. It's important. That afternoon, Marcus arrived at the temporary trailer the fire department had set up for Victoria to meet with investigators and insurance representatives. He was out of uniform, wearing the same clothes he'd worn the day before, one of only 3 outfits his family had salvaged from their burned home. Captain Thompson, Victoria said when she saw him, thank you for coming. What can I do for you, ma'am? Victoria studied Marcus's face, seeing exhaustion and worry that she hadn't noticed the night before. I heard about your house. I'm so sorry. Thank you. These things happen. No, Victoria said firmly. These things don't just happen. You lost your home because you chose to save my children instead of your own family's house. That's not something that just happens. That's something extraordinary that someone chooses to do. Marcus remained silent, unsure where this conversation was heading. I owe you more than just thanks, Victoria continued. I owe you an apology. For the past year, I've questioned your qualifications, your competence, your right to serve in this community. I was wrong about everything. Mrs. Whitmore, you don't need to— Yes, I do, Victoria interrupted. I need to say this because last night you proved something I was too prejudiced to see. You're not just qualified, you're exactly the kind of person we need protecting our community. Someone who puts saving lives above everything else, including their own interests. Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a check. I spoke to my insurance company this morning. I'm authorized to offer you this as compensation for the personal losses you suffered while saving my family. Marcus looked at the check and felt his breath catch. It was for $500,000, more money than he would earn in 10 years as a firefighter, more than enough to rebuild his family's life and secure his daughter's future. Ma'am, I can't accept this, Marcus said, handing the check back to Victoria. Why not? Victoria asked, genuinely confused. You saved my children and lost your own home in the process. This is just making things right. Because I didn't save your children for money, Marcus replied. I saved them because that's my job, and because they needed help. Taking payment for doing my job properly would make me something I'm not. Victoria stared at Marcus in amazement. He was refusing a life-changing amount of money because he believed accepting payment for heroism would compromise his integrity. Then let me ask you something different, Victoria said. What do you need? Not what you want, not what you deserve, but what do you actually need to take care of your family? Marcus thought about Angela, 7 months pregnant and staying in a homeless shelter. He thought about Zoe, who had cried herself to sleep the night before because all her toys were gone. He thought about the impossibility of finding affordable housing in their area on a firefighter's salary. We need a place to live, Marcus said honestly, and we need it to be somewhere Zoe can stay in the same school district because she's finally settled there. Victoria nodded. What if I told you I own several rental properties in this area, and that one of them just became available? A 3-bedroom house with a yard, 2 blocks from Zoe's school. Would you accept that as a rental at whatever you can afford to pay? Mrs. Whitmore, I appreciate the offer, but we can't afford market rate rent in this neighborhood. Who said anything about market rate? Victoria smiled for the first time since Marcus had met her. I'm talking about a rate that works for your family's budget. Consider it a community service program for essential workers, like firefighters. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the backyard of the house Victoria had rented to his family for less than half the market rate, watching Zoe play on a swing set that Victoria's children had outgrown and donated. Angela had given birth to a healthy baby boy, and they had slowly rebuilt their possessions with the help of donations from the fire department and surprising contributions from other residents in the neighborhood. You know what's funny? Angela said, joining Marcus on the back deck with baby Michael in her arms. A year ago, Mrs. Whitmore was trying to get you fired. Now she stops by every week to check on us and bring toys for the kids. People can change, Marcus replied, watching Victoria's daughter Emma teaching Zoe how to properly hit a softball in the yard, when they're forced to see past their assumptions. Emma had become a regular visitor to their home, often bringing her younger brother David to play with Zoe. The teenagers who had been rescued from the fire had developed a deep respect for Marcus that had gradually extended to genuine friendship with his family. Captain Thompson saved our lives, Emma frequently told her friends. But more than that, he showed us what real heroes look like. They don't look like what you expect, and they don't do it for recognition. Victoria had used the fire as an opportunity to completely reassess her values and relationships. She had joined the fire department's volunteer auxiliary, helping to coordinate community support for firefighters and their families. She had also become one of the most vocal advocates for adequate funding and compensation for first responders. I learned something that night, Victoria told a gathering of community leaders during a fundraiser for the fire department. I learned that the people who risk their lives to protect us don't care about our politics, our prejudices, or our opinions about them. They care about saving lives, period. She paused, looking directly at Marcus, who was in the audience with his family. Captain Thompson lost his own home while saving my children from mine. He could have left to protect his own family. Any reasonable person would have, but he didn't, because he's the kind of person who puts service above self-interest. The fundraiser raised over $200,000 for equipment and family support programs, but the real victory was the change in community relationships that had grown out of that terrible night. You know what I told my kids? Victoria said to Marcus during one of her weekly visits to check on his family. I told them that real strength isn't about having money or status. Real strength is about doing the right thing when it costs you everything. Marcus smiled, watching David teach baby Michael how to stack blocks while Zoe and Emma worked on homework together at the kitchen table. They seemed to have learned that lesson pretty well. They learned it from you, Victoria replied, from watching someone put their lives above his own interests, even when they hadn't earned that consideration. 2 years after the fire, Marcus was promoted to battalion chief, making him one of the youngest black officers to reach that rank in the department's history. Victoria had written a letter of recommendation that detailed not only his professional competence, but also his character under pressure. "When people ask me about diversity and public safety," Victoria said during Marcus's promotion ceremony, "I tell them about the night Captain Thompson chose to save my children while his own house burned down. Diversity isn't about quotas or politics. It's about having the best people in positions where lives depend on their judgment, regardless of what they look like." Marcus's story had inspired other departments to examine their recruitment and retention practices, leading to programs that actively sought out qualified candidates from underrepresented communities and supported them throughout their careers. "The most important lesson I learned," Marcus told a group of new firefighter recruits, "is that your job isn't about who appreciates you or who questions your qualifications. It's about being ready to save lives when people need you, regardless of how they've treated you before." One of the recruits, a young black woman from the inner city, raised her hand. "Chief Thompson, how do you handle it when people doubt your abilities because of your race?" Marcus smiled, thinking about Victoria Whitmore and how their relationship had evolved from suspicion to mutual respect to genuine friendship. "You prove them wrong," he said simply, "not by being angry or defensive, but by being so competent and professional that their assumptions become irrelevant. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you help them become better people in the process." The night of the fire had taught both Marcus and Victoria that heroism isn't about recognition or reward. It's about making the right choice when everything is at stake. Marcus learned that true service sometimes requires sacrificing your own interests for strangers who haven't earned your consideration. Victoria learned that her prejudices had blinded her to the extraordinary people who were already protecting her community. Their story became a reminder that the most profound changes in human relationships often come through shared crisis and mutual recognition of character under pressure. Sometimes it takes losing everything to discover what really matters, and sometimes the people we judge most harshly become the ones who save us in ways we never expected. If this story touched your heart, remember that there are Marcus Thompsons all around us, people who serve others without expecting gratitude, who risk everything for strangers, and who prove through their actions that heroism comes from character, not circumstances. The most valuable discovery we can make is learning to see past our assumptions and recognize the extraordinary dedication of ordinary people who make our communities safer every day. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.